Welcome to Taking the Helm with Lynn McLaughlin. In this ever-changing world, it's essential to prioritize our children's emotional well-being. Lynn can show you how to learn and model healthy emotional habits for your loved ones and become a rock-solid support system for your family. Now, here's your host.
Hello, and thank you for joining us again as we take the helm. Last week, we spoke with globally sought-after mental fitness resilience coach and master sophrologist, I had to practice that word, Annette Ebbinghaus. We dove into modeling positive behavior, setting clear expectations, and providing opportunities for children to practice empathy and compassion. What self-sabotaging traits do you have that affect your parenting habits? And we now know what to watch for in our kids if we suspect that they've experienced trauma. And lastly, we talked about how the words we use matter. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed our first show, took away some things to think about, and we would love to hear your feedback. All right, moving on. We've got so much to share this week. I want to get right into it. If you know or you suspect you're a parent of a strong-willed child, trust me, I am, this next hour is for you. Introducing the powerhouse parenting coach for parents of strong-willed kids, Danielle Bettman. Danielle is a positive discipline certified parent educator with years of experience as a teacher and home visitor with a degree in early childhood development from birth to age 8. She's also a mom of 2 daughters, a wife of 13 years to her high school sweetheart, and host of the well-loved podcast, Failing Motherhood. We'll be talking about that today. Danielle empowers parents to crack the code of their strong-willed child's personality, meeting their deepest core needs to improve their behavior and find new levels of patience. Wow, we could all use that. Instead of inadvertently inviting defiance by using traditional tools or playing whack-a-mole with short-sighted reactions, families get on the same page and learn how to cultivate cooperation while being kind and firm at the same time. Let's invite Danielle to join us in the room and transform your relationship with your most challenging child. Welcome to you, Danielle.
Hey, Lynn. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh, wow. We have a lot to jump into in the next hour. And I always ask every guest the same question at the beginning, because you're here today for a reason. What led you? What path did you take to get to where you are today and doing this incredibly powerful work, Danielle?
Yeah, hearing you recap it, it was just like, oh yeah, that's so cool. That's me. That's my story. So let's see, to recap, in high school, when you think that you're supposed to figure out what you're going to do with your life, all I knew is I liked working with kids. I was working at a daycare preschool. So I was like, all right, education, I'll be a teacher. And I ended up going to a college where they combine early childhood with elementary and special ed. And so they call it the inclusive major, where you can learn to teach any child within this age range from birth through 3rd grade. And I went into that because I thought, you know what, I don't know exactly what I want to do, but that gives me lots of options. So it had a teaching certification and all sorts of child development built in. So out of school, I started working at a school called Educator. It was in Omaha, Nebraska, and it was a early Head Start program. Beautiful $10 million building, very cutting edge programming. And I loved it. But what I realized was the 3-year-olds that came in were already missing out on a ton. So I wanted to go start at the beginning, and I switched to early Head Start. So I started with a group of 6-week to 9-month-olds and stayed with them for 3 years. Continuity of care, and was able to kind of watch them grow up, and it was great. And I still felt like something was missing, because what was happening in a classroom was great, but what happens at home is what really wires kids. And these parents were doing the hardest job in the world with little to no training to speak of, no village, just, all the hard things. And so I wanted to work with them. And I thought, if I could empower these parents, not only does it affect their child, but all the kids of that household for not only one school year, but their whole childhood. And so I ended up creating a partnership through our school with Save the Children. And it was a program called Early Steps to School Success. And I was a home visitor then for the next 4.5 years, where I had a caseload of families, and I spent an hour in their house every single week, bringing resources and materials and having lots of conversations around equipping that parent to understand their child's development more, do lots of screenings, read lots of books, do activities between the parent and child, and really just support the parent. And that's kind of when the fire was lit under me, and when I also became a parent myself. And then I was like, okay, I had two girls back to back. They're 15 months apart. I don't professionally recommend that. It's a little bit too close in age, arguably. I don't regret it now. But that's kind of what led me into working with parents, and I love it.
Okay, so two connections here. My last two are 13 months apart. Yep.
Oh
I'm
my
right
gosh.
with you there. Right with you there. I don't know how people with twins, triplets, quadruplets, I don't know. Oh my gosh, how they do it. Obviously, with a family of support, I hope. Yes, having taught kindergarten, and I only taught it for 1 year, and I think you just basically hit it on the nail. And yeah, so kids are coming into school lacking. I mean, we're not saying there's things missing that we would hope would be in a place. There isn't a kindergarten teacher that I know that hasn't put their eyes on a child and said, oh, we got to jump on this and do some early intervention. And by the time they're 4 or 5, we've missed out on a couple of years of early intervention. And that's a different kettle of fish. But okay, so let's talk about what's missing. What's missing in those really early developmental years for kids?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So they're taking off. About 90% of all the neuron connections that their brain is going to have in their entire lifetime happen and fire before the age of 6. And so much, there's a huge bell curve that just explodes in those first few years. The first year, we're seeing a lot of that through their language development and, learning to walk and all these, big milestones happening. But what's really happening is unseen. And that is when they're kind of downloading the software that they're going to run on autopilot the rest of their life. And those are the things about, kind of the template that they're learning about relationships and their identity, that they're beginning to kind of figure out, who am I and how do I see the world and what do I need to do to get my needs met? And they're kind of asking a lot of questions of their world and taking lots of notes and then being able to kind of run some systems, and whatever their brain is perceiving is, kind of what then the narrative is that they begin to believe. And it's not entirely even accurate, but they're filling in the gap so that they can make sense of it as well as they possibly can for the life experience they have. And a lot of those notes they're taking down are really core things that, we as adults still hold with us today. And, that is, some of the pieces of their confidence or their self-image or their understanding of trust in relationships and just kind of these core attachment features. And a lot of that, we want to be as intentional as possible when we're supporting these kids, but we don't even know what's going on behind the scenes, behind their eyes.
I love what you said about their perceptions, right? Mm-hmm. These little people who are just taking it all in 24/7 around them, what they perceive and what they believe. So very often as an educator, when you get into a conversation with a child and you try to understand, that's the most important part, is trying to understand where they're coming from, because it's a place that we sometimes can't even imagine. Well, I'm not really sure how we got there, but now I understand. All right, let's talk about some of those roots that create that a child's emotional well-being at home. We used to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Is that still the go-to?
For the most part, I think understanding the rudimentary, needs of humans that we as adults can relate to, because I think sometimes we put kids on a different pedestal and, almost like other them in some way. And we're so much more alike than we are different when it comes to how we're interacting in the world and the things that we thrive on day to day. We need to feel in control. We need to feel loved. We need to feel like we belong. We need to feel safe. And kids need all the same things, if not so much more, because it makes it possible to unlock all the other things that they need to do to learn and grow.
So that sense of belonging and significance to me is one of the most critical things, because if a child doesn't feel loved or safe or belonging to something, that gives them that sense of growing confidence in themselves and ability to take risks. Yes. How do we develop I mean, this is a big question, right? Because we all think we're doing it, and we certainly are. I just want to say to parents, right? There's no manual that comes with parenting. Every single child is different, and one of the things we need to practice, and I hope, and I've just learned this in the last 5 years of my life, is self-compassion and forgiveness. And yes, we're trying, and we're doing the best that we can. And if this doesn't work, that's okay. We're going to try something else. So, that sense of belonging. What do we need to be doing to make that happen for kids today? With all of this information surrounding them in this world that none of us have ever experienced.
Too much. And I'm so glad you added that caveat in, because that's why I have my podcast, Failing Motherhood, is because none of this is strategy-wise is accessible if a parent themselves doesn't have sanity or the capacity to learn it, or isn't thriving themselves. So I always prioritize a parent's mental health first, and then a child's mental health second. And so everything that we're talking about in this conversation is with that caveat in mind. And I always am supporting the parent first, and that's why I do what I do. And I know in a classroom, I'm working with the parents. So a sense of belonging within a family is a very unique opportunity to create this sense of being known for who you are inside an identity that is bigger than you. And you can do that within a family of 2, a family of 3, a family of 5 in a really, really special way. And one of the ways that I do that with my clients is we write a family agreement where the family sits down and together says, how do we want to feel in our home? Let's just write down a few things. We want to feel safe. We want to feel like we have fun. We want to feel like we love each other, like loved. We want to feel so secure. Okay, what makes us feel that way? What makes you feel that way? Let's take some notes and write down some examples. Okay, so what are some ways we can protect that with some family rules? And then it kind of connects the dots between, oh, okay, so it's not just arbitrary, parents are mean and they make us turn off our screens when we don't want to. It's, it's actually a part of this like bigger, sense of community, and it's for our good, so that we can have more fun together, so that we can, be nicer to each other at the end of the day. And it opens their eyes to these bigger concepts and helps us be able to feel like our boundaries we're enforcing are coming from a really, really healthy, secure place too. And there's a lot of mutual respect there.
Yeah, and they become members of that family unit. And it's never too young, because even if the conversation is between, the two, whatever that family unit looks like, and a 2-year-old, it's the parents that are communicating as well to make sure this is something that they both agree on as their kids are growing older, I think. Am I right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's all about the modeling and, kind of what you're beginning to allow them to absorb through that sponge that, they are right then.
Yeah, I love it. Somebody said to me, this is more about communication, but the connectedness, it's really, the old, how was school today? And you get this answer, it was fine. But if you ask an intentional question of every family member before you leave the house in the morning, for example, what will make you feel happy? This is Lady J.B. Owen, actually, who said this, so I have to give her credit. What will make you happy as you leave the house today? And each person says, oh, well, I have this happening and I have this happening. Then when everybody's back at home, you can ask the question, and there's intention and there's follow-up, and they feel listened and they feel heard. And that family unit then is again connected. Just thought I'd share that.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. Yeah. Everybody gets the I'm fine response after school.
It's so true. Okay. All right. I want to move over to a huge one. This might take us a while, but you mentioned it in what we all need control. We certainly need control as adults. As a teacher, offering choices is one of the most powerful strategies to use as educators. For an example, when a student becomes defiant, but we give the choices that we can live with, right? Mm-hmm. So, and when we give the choices we can live with, and they have a choice, they take back control. So yes. I see that you're upset, and I'd like to talk to you about that. Would you like to take a walk? Or would you like to have them in my office to calm down? Immediately, that gives them a choice. Mm-hmm. I've looked through the educator context in there because there's a direct connection to that sense of control. But what do we do with a 2-year-old, Danielle? to give them a sense of control in their lives.
Yes. They're the ones that are screaming for it the most, arguably, because everything in their life feels like it is decided for them. They are told what to do almost every minute of the day, and they're just dying to have some of that control back. And they want to know that life is happening. Life is not happening to them, but they are an active participant in creating life and being able to have a little bit of a runway of expectations or making it a little bit more predictable so that they know what's going to happen before it's going to happen. And, so often especially if kids have not a whole lot of expressive language, then we kind of just take it for granted and just, do things for them or don't really give them a heads up because, they're just along for the ride. Well, they're not willingly along for the ride. You're going to get their heels pulled in deep and they're going to pull you back if you don't. I'll bring them along in a really dignified way. So a lot of what the parents I work with need to do is first start by having some visual schedules. So a 2-year-old can easily be able to have the emotional literacy to, look at small clip art and be able to say, oh, okay, so in the morning, I need to get my diaper changed, then eat breakfast, then get dressed, and then grab my backpack. And, those 4 things, if I can just see them on the wall, then that is in charge and not mom, nagging and pulling me along or, we're just constantly power struggle battling. And instead, I can go read my chart. And I can decide which one I want to do next. And I can tell mom what to do next. And that's really empowering. So simple ones for the morning, simple ones for the bedtime routine, even just a little bit of a one for what our day entails is super powerful to be able to say, okay, we have breakfast, then we go to the park, then we have lunch, then we have snack, or then we have a nap, and then, dinner, and then watch a movie. Being able to kind of put that out linearly and chronologically. You don't have to stick to it perfectly. It can change every day, but being able to just provide some sort of sense of making sense of time it's a very ambiguous concept. Kids really struggle with that. Making that make sense is going to make both sides of the cooperation together so much easier. And, so that's a big one. Being able to have simple rituals that, because transitions are the hardest point in change being something that they have to be okay with. Separation anxiety is also peaking in toddlers. So if you can have a simple goodbye routine, or a little ritual where every single time you drop them off at daycare, you do the same exact things. You walk up to the door, you do a hug, you do a kiss and a high five, and then you hand them to their teacher and you walk away. No matter how much they're having a hard time, if you do that every single time, that is reassuring, that is comforting, that allows them to feel like, okay, this is predictable, it makes sense, I'm going to be, may not like it, but I'm okay with it. And little things like that are allowing you to see that this child just needs to feel secure and in control of their own little life. And I can do that without diminishing my authority. It's really actually empowering both of us.
Oh my gosh, so many things. I just want to hit on what you said about, letting them get dressed. So when you see little people heading out in the morning with the mismatched clothing and whatever, and it's lovely because you know that they have taken control for themselves and they're proud of themselves.
Yes.
So you notice that in a very positive way. Wow. Well, we're heading off to break. We have talked about so much. We're coming back after break with Danielle Bettman. We're going to be talking about self-regulation and how do we get our kids through those emotional roller coasters when they're pulling us in with them. We'll be back in a moment.
Our children are growing up in a world that is more complex than ever. It's time to start thinking proactively. Meet Zirco and the children who glow in the color they are feeling because they haven't learned to control their emotions yet. In the Power of Thought Children's series, we're not only teaching children about emotional vocabulary, but how to recognize how they are feeling and what they can do about it. We live on an imaginary planet called Tezra, where every character is named after a crystal. Each of the 5 books in the series takes children into a situation they can relate to, but teaches problem-solving skills and evidence-based strategies they can use for life. This series was developed in collaboration with clinicians, educators, parents, and guardians, and it's the winner of the Mom's Choice Award. Check it out at lynnmclaughlin.com under the Books tab. Now, back to the show.
Thanks for being with us. We are here with Danielle, who is a positive discipline certified parent educator. We've talked about so many things. We're going to jump in now to self-regulation and emotional roller coasters with our, highly motivated or strong-willed kids. But I want to go back and ask a question about something we were just talking about before the break, Danielle, with the daily schedules. I love the morning. I love the bedtime schedule. We had the bedtime schedule going on in our house. But in the daily schedule, how do you prep a child? Or maybe you can't even prep them because that schedule changes for some reason. How do we get around that outburst when something they expected to happen isn't going to happen?
Ooh, yes. That it happens all the time because that's life, right? Like not everything is predictable. And even the best intentioned parent that's laying out everything beforehand has that fear of, well, now I'm promising something that might not happen. And we all know how that goes down. And, the way I would address that is to like no matter how much you visually depict things, kids are doing that anyway. They have the expectation in their head of how things are going to go, even if it was not communicated and it's completely unspoken and unagreed upon even. And then when that expectation comes crashing down with reality, they have a hard time. And that comes up all the time, whether or not it's, something about, oh, I thought my friend was going to bring this toy for their play date and they didn't, or I thought we were going to do this at school and we didn't. So they're always having to deal with this, emotional cognitive dissonance. And now we're able to just help them see that and understand it even more, even though they still may protest. And, emotions are okay. They are entitled to have an opinion and not want things to go not their way. That is, allowed. And we want to help them know how to deal with that emotion without it being hurtful, right? To, people, places, or things. So it is a big learning opportunity, and it is kind of a necessary component for the skill building that we're trying to do at this age. And, however blindsided you are by these changes in your day-to-day, and with my clients, we use a collaborative problem-solving approach, which means that you identify a problem and then work together to find a solution. And so if you can just say, oh no, we had this plan for the day and now it has to change, right? Like the toilet stopped working and so a plumber has to come, so we can't leave the house now. And if you can just relate and say, like, that's so disappointing. We really wanted to go to the park today and now we have to stay home. Oh man, I'm disappointed. Or that stinks. And let's find a way to make it fun while we stay home. What can we do instead? Let's think about some other things that we could do that would, be accessible now. And that's going to be able to give you a shared sense of moving forward rather than just feeling like it's me against you.
And you just changed the context of the conversation to one of respect. And I've heard you say many times, Danielle, we need to respect our children as we expect to be respected ourselves, right? So instead of the mom's the boss, let's go, we got to go, or nope, we can't go. That whole opening up the lines of communication and bringing them in as problem solvers, really, oh my gosh, that just empowers them too. Problem solvers, empowerment. Gotta love it. Oh my gosh, we're hitting on so much. All right, I want to talk about and the next part we're going to get into is kids feeling seen and understood by their parent. And that example that you just gave is one where that strong-willed child is often feeling misunderstood, but the two-way communication helps them to feel less stuck, I guess I'll say.
Yes. The strong-willed kids have a very, very strong, overwhelming sense of I know what I want and I know how to get it, and I feel like this is the path I need to take. It is necessary and justified. And if you don't meet me there with that, if I don't know that you get what I'm trying to say, if the message I'm sending is not received, then I feel like I have no choice but to escalate that message and make it both of our problems, essentially. And I'm going to push through, but I'm going to feel like I can't get over this. Like I cannot just move on. And that's when parents get understandably extremely frustrated, because I've explained the reason why, I've brought in lots of logic and reasoning, and I'm trying to lean on that rather than the exasperated anger or just, big shows of dysregulation on my side of it. So I'm trying here, and we are just like at each other's throats because you're not getting what I'm saying. I'm not getting what you're saying. And here we are at this impasse and we can't move forward. And there's understandably lots of big emotions at play. And that is a huge piece of the miscommunication with strong-willed kids, because they're not doing it because it makes sense. It's not a logical, rational next step. They're reacting usually impulsively. The reasons they have are very irrational, and it's hard for parents to work with that when they're very analytical themselves, and there becomes a big mismatch in communication.
And I would think very often kids don't know why this is blown, right? And so that's the whole piece about teaching emotional vocabulary and helping them understand what a body look like. Are you red in the face? Are you tense? Well, that mean that's your worry. That might mean that you're angry. Let's talk about what could have made you, right? And then teaching all of that at a young age, because then they bring it with them for life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's for a lot of kids, they need to do that in moments that are not about them. They need to be able to talk about the TV character and what the TV character is going through, or, relate to watching a parent model that and say, oh, the TV remote is not working. I'm so frustrated. I want to throw it against the wall, but I'm not going to, right? I'm going to take a deep breath. And that's when they're really going to take it in. But when it's these big emotion moments for them, they become like they just see red. They are not teachable really in that moment. And if you're becoming frustrated and dysregulated yourself, you're not a good teacher either. And so if we try to put all the pressure on this one moment that we think is most influential right before or after a big behavior occurs, then, we're missing the mark on a lot of the teaching that can be happening in all the other neutral moments that are much more, easier to get through to them in, and take advantage of those. That makes a big difference too.
And a neutral moment will come after they calm down, which is another teaching time too. Oh, wow. Okay. Let's talk about, we have been talking about it under a big umbrella, that self-regulation piece, which is so important. So I want to ask you, how do you differentiate, Danielle, between, the child that comes home from school and has held in those emotions all day long for whatever reason, fear, anxiety, concern, whatever. They come home and, woo, you get the blow up. How do you differentiate between them being a strong-willed person and maybe there's something developing like anxiety, which needs some additional support for?
Oh, yeah, that is such a great question, and an important one for parents, because that's one of if they're taking parenting seriously, then they're worried about things that matter. And, asking that type of question shows that you are worrying about the things that matter, because you are wanting to be vigilant and responsive, and you're wanting to seek out the support that your child might need, and, not be a limiting factor because you are missing the mark or missing the signs. So you're already on the right track if you're, wondering something like that. And sometimes it's very hard, because a lot of their behavior, especially when it's like 2 inches from your face and you are in it day after day and it's mostly with you, it feels very overwhelming to see the big picture and be able to zoom out. So a lot of what you are starting to look for are more and more indicators to help you make sense of things. So in and of itself, one incident, you could create a whole backstory and whole narrative and know exactly what's going to happen 20 years from now based off that one incident. But that's not going to be well-informed, right? So we have to be able to take a lot of things into account and then look at the bigger picture. What is the pattern here? What are we really seeing? How many environments is this happening in? How often is this happening? What types of language are they using? And, what are we seeing as some of the biggest triggers that we're responding to? And a lot of that with a strong-willed child is, anxiety in a sense, because they, again, are feeling like they don't have control, and there's no feeling that's more anxiety prone than feeling out of control of your own life. And so a lot of the things that they're struggling with this personality trait is very likened to other things. And that's why parents will jump to therapy and a child therapist as usually their first line of defense, because they're thinking, okay, this child needs a lot more skill building with emotional regulation. I don't know what I'm missing, and so I need somebody else to teach it to them. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not understanding exactly what's missing in its entirety. So it's not going to hurt, but it's also not going to make the biggest difference in the most efficient way for this personality trait. So it's very hard to understand when you're looking at one instance, but strong-willed kids overall, they have high highs and low lows. So if you only see low lows and no high highs, that's one big indicator that they may be struggling with their mental health in a way that, that let's go see a practitioner. If there was a particular incident that changed their personality kind of on a dime, and there's been a before and after, then that's definitely a sign that you need to go see a practitioner right away. But if this has kind of they've just been obstinate since day one, since the womb, then you're dealing with something else. And so you're kind of trying to look in the big picture, what are we seeing? And if we see a child that is also very excitable and lovable and sweet and helpful when they want to be, and their excitement is tenacious and palpable when they're excited, then you don't fret when the lows are as visceral.
All right. Well, thank you for that explanation. All right. I want to throw this in. We haven't talked about this, but, and I've got my educator hat on as well as my parent hat too, right? No. Oh my gosh. Talk about a trigger word. It's just the word itself. It's not even the fact that you said no. It's just they hear the word and many kids go off. So I always like to use, instead of saying no, for example, we can find other ways to say no that doesn't make the child go, whoa. Your child's watching a TV show, but you're about to go out shopping. So what you can say is, we can make that happen. I'll record your show for you and we can watch it when we get home from the grocery store. I need your help picking up your breakfast or your cereal or your snack. And that sends them several messages. You heard them. Yes, they're going to be able to watch their show, and you need their help. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I teach the collaborative problem solving piece. Again, you can use that in any circumstance and be able to say, hey, I see you're having a really hard, you love the show, right? You love the show. You wish you could watch the show for 8 more hours. Understandably, it's not fun, for kids to go to the grocery store. I hear you really reiterating. I get it. I know what you're trying to say. I've been saying it for you, so there's no reason to escalate. And, the big word, not but and.
Yeah, and, right. Oh, yes.
I'm not going to have anything to make you for dinner if we don't get to the grocery store. That's the problem. That's the limiting factor here. So what can we do? Would you like to watch TV when we get back? Would you like, that's where you bring in those choices of what is 2 options of a way that you can cooperate right now that is going to bring back some control for you. Would you like to bring this stuffed animal or this book in the car? Would you like to wear these shoes or these shoes? Would you like to come with me and find some fruit snacks or pick out a cereal? Let's just talk through all the things that you do have control over. And that's going to be able to get you into a place of considering that rather than just sitting in the consideration of, do I want to go to the store? Yes or no? And that's where they stay stuck.
All right. Where were you when my kids were little? Seriously, I'm so thrilled to be bringing your voice out for everyone to hear, because strong-willed kids are everywhere. All right. I just want to hit on one more thing here before we head off for a break. That healthy balance in the parenting approach between being authoritative and warm, respectful and kind and firm. You've given some examples, but the authoritative approach isn't going to get us anywhere. In my mind, it's going to get those kids even into a more combative and volatile state.
Yes. Yep, 100%. The positive discipline, the line is being kind and firm, which means that, yes, you are validating emotions and you are making them feel heard and validating, and you're still holding to an expectation or a boundary that is a non-negotiable, but then you're following that up with all the things that are negotiable about that and being able to help them wrap their mind around that reality in a way that still shows that you have kind of the control. You do, you are the one in charge. That's not, they know that whether or not, you make it completely obvious, but being able to walk that line, even in the same sentence, by saying, yeah, I know you love this show. This is your favorite show. Oh my gosh. And we do need to get to the store right now. So we're going to have to shut it off. Would you like me to shut it off, or do you want to shut it off? With being able to just follow that right up and make both of those things, true. They are both true. You love this show and it's time to go. The one doesn't, negate the other. And being able, that allows you to have a lot more confidence as a parent. And that vibe of confidence is what you need, much more than just a loud voice or a big, intimidating type feature over your child.
Well, when we have that healthy vibe and that respectful vibe, it feeds us too, right? What goes around comes around. It's like a family dynamic. One person's upset, angry, and we all feel it. We all sense it.
The walking on eggshells is real. Yes.
Oh, yeah. I've read the book too, trust me. Before we go any further, be really specific. We should be very specific about, what does it look like? How do I know if I have a strong-willed child, and how are they different? Is there neurodivergence there? So how do I know my kid is a strong-willed kid?
Yeah. Sometimes if you ask a parent of a strong-willed child, they will say, if you know, you know. But, we like to give a little bit more parameters than that, where, especially if you have nothing to compare it to, you don't have nieces and nephews, and maybe you only have one child, how can you know, right? And how can you know if what you're dealing with is quote unquote normal, or if there is something really wrong here because we have meltdowns 3, 4, 5 times a day. This can't possibly be normal. What is going on here? And if you have 2 kids and one of them is really easy, go with the flow, compliant, like wants to make you happy, and then the other is the opposite, then you know. But there are, several indicators of kind of the pattern that you start to see as they get a little bit older. And a lot of it is the big emotions, the high highs, the low lows. Like I said, it feels like their emotions are just very big in all capacities on that spectrum. And for, my daughter, when she's excited, her arms just like tense up and she almost like flaps with excitement. It's so visceral. And then when she is mad, you can just feel when she's on my body that it's just like completely overwhelmed her. She has no capacity to control it at that point. She also has a really, really sweet, big heart. She feels things big because she's very empathetic, and she is like gets upset with a commercial, where something happens to someone and she feels bad for them. So that sensitivity is a big piece of it. A lot of parents will say they're so smart. They're so smart, they're perceptive and observant, and they know what's going on. And that means that they're usually pretty expressive too over time. They have a big vocabulary, but then when they get emotionally flighted, they lose it. And then they start to use animal sounds or meh, or just growls. And then a parent is like, what is happening? I know you know your word, use your words, but they can't. That's a big indicator. Parenting them feels exhausting because everything is a constant negotiation. Every care task, every decision, everything that needs to be communicated, there's pushback, there's resistance, there's, my side versus your side. And it just feels like, I don't know what's going to set them off next. I don't even know, why they're mad. And it's very emotionally draining as a parent. But typically they do pretty well at school, where a lot of this is environment specific, and they can kind of, feels like they can turn it on and off, where they're filtered or they have it under control with, a babysitter or at school, but then they save it all up for you at home, which is supposed to be a compliment.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But makes it very difficult when they're at school more and more throughout the day, and then it's more concentrated at home that you're seeing these big emotions. And they just really want life to be on their terms because they have strong opinions and they're very persistent, and, they know what they want and they're going to go after it, which is going to serve them so well in life, right? They're going to be the leaders of a Fortune 500 company sometime soon. We just have to survive until they get there. And usually, there's one parent that is dealing with the brunt of this, where it feels like they're either being walked all over, or they're walking on eggshells, or they're a punching bag for these emotions, and they're just trying to use the tools they have to figure this out, but it just feels like a lot. So that parent is also very guilt-ridden. They have anxiety themselves. They have a lot of overwhelm. They're burned out. They aren't taking care of themselves because they are just trying to get through the day and make sure everybody else is happy. And usually one of the parents, because it might be, kind of genetic, they're strong-willed themselves. And so they have a very strong sense of how the day should go and how their child should act and, what they should be doing. And then that tenacity, butts up with their child's tenacity. And so, of course, they're going to have a hard time or they're going to feel like they're at each other's throats. And so it just kind of perpetuates a vicious cycle of frustration and resentment between the parent and the child.
Wow, you just described my life about, oh my gosh, 10 years ago or so, which is a great segue to your podcast, Failing Motherhood. I was totally vulnerable as your guest, Danielle. I shared, if we only knew then what we know now. In terms of having an anxious child and wanting to be in control. So if you want to hear that vulnerable side, full permission of my 25-year-old daughter, who's doing beautifully. But wow, it was a really challenging time. And like I said, I wish I had you to learn from back then. All right, let's talk about your podcast.
Yeah. So it's called Failing Motherhood, like you said. It came from a place of doing a survey with a bunch of anonymous parents. And I asked them, what keeps you up at night? What are you afraid of? What are your fears as a parent? And I thought it was going to be, something bad happening to my child or, these health things or whatever. And for the most part, it was some sense of, I feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm screwing them up. I'm afraid of my temper. And I feel like I'm the only one. And, it's just comical when you see all of these anonymous responses all saying, I'm the only one that feels this way. And they all are saying the exact same thing, where I was like, okay, we need to talk about this. We need to break down the stigma. I know there's already so much with even asking for help in and of itself, let alone asking for help as a parent to say, I don't know how to parent my child. I can't control this. I don't have this all under control. So just being able to talk about that. So every guest that I come on, I do interviews every other week. I ask every guest, how have you felt like you were failing as a parent? Share openly, share honestly, and be able to just, even if you're an expert in you have a PhD, you're going to have felt like you were failing at some point or have a very specific story or, struggled in a certain way with one of your kids. So let's talk about that. And then let's talk about how you've grown or what you've learned and what you have to share to listeners that they could learn, from your story, and just being able to dive into what it really looks like behind the scenes in another person's life, not just the Instagram highlights. That's what, listeners come to my podcast for. And so it's a lot of stories and, we talk about picky eating. We talk about a lot of topics that are, near and dear to making parents feel like they're failing, like sleeping through the night and all the things. But then every other week as well, I dive into a specific topic or a something that you can learn about strong-willed kids that's going to help you if that's, something you're particularly struggling with as a parent. So we have over 100 episodes over there. It's on every platform and it's every Tuesday.
And you can search by subject, you can search by topic. And if you want to search the words strong-willed, you probably get about 100 of your episodes showing up in that search engine.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people are finding me, actually. They're searching Strong-Willed Child on Spotify. And here I am.
Oh my goodness. So fantastic to actually, there's a difference between speaking with a clinician, and trust me, I use clinicians in my own gone counseling and all those things in my life, but to actually speak to someone who's had the life experience, it just makes it so much more meaningful to me. To me, personally, that's my opinion. My opinion. All right. Now, the segue is beautiful. Now, you offer free training for parents. What's it all about? Where can they find you?
Yeah. So my website is called Parenting Wholeheartedly. And right there on the front page is a free training for parents of strong-willed kids that really want to cultivate cooperation without yelling, without crushing their spirit, without threats and bribes. What do I do? Because clearly the tools in my toolkit aren't working. And in this free training, I go into the 4 misconceptions that you might be believing about how to parent your strong-willed child that are keeping you from the relationship you want with your child and the home environment that you desire for your family life. And so we go into those in depth, and then I introduce my framework, which has the pillars of your composure as a parent, your communication style with your child, and meeting your child's core needs. And, I break down kind of the tools in each one of those toolkits that you need comprehensively, holistically to work on all at the same time, because they're so interconnected, to be able to really improve your child's behavior and improve your own behavior as a parent and have more control over, what you can control, which is your responses and your reactions. And that is truly the most effective, most time efficient, energy efficient. You're spending energy either way as a parent. You're either going to deal with the meltdown or you're going to figure out how to avoid the meltdown in the first place. They both are exhausting, but you choose choose the path that you want to be on that is going to get you to more hope and more potential for better days as a family. A lot of my clients come into my program saying, I want to homeschool. I want to, start my own business. I want to live abroad. I want to do have these big dreams. And I don't feel like that's possible right now. I feel like we're held hostage the way that we're living right now with the behaviors that, we're dealing with that are uncontrollable. So I make those dreams a reality by allowing you to create the path to get there. And a lot of that is what I dive into in that training. So you can kind of wrap your mind around what that work looks like and how to do that as a family. So it's parentingwholeheartedly.com/unapologetic.
I mean, those are some big life changes. We're talking about, do we go dinner? Can we go through the drive-through at Tim Hortons? Of course, I'm in Ontario without having a meltdown, a breakup.
Yeah, literally.
Those kinds of things. So those are daily decisions where you're in the reactive. That's what the show is all about, being proactive. Danielle, yes. I pulled something off your site that I think this just speaks to me, and I'm going to pull a few of the bullets out. But if you're a parent of a strong-willed child, tell me if you've thought about any of these things. I'm scared of my child sometimes. I never know what's going on. Raise your hand, people, or if you're in the car, don't raise your hand. Just, oh, yep, that's me. I don't like being around them or spending time with them right now because the relationship is just so, it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm overreacting. It's all in my head. Oh, I hate how angry I get with them. I don't like the person I become around them. That's the driving force, and so many more things that you talk about on your site. But we go back to modeling and learning ourselves, so our kids be the best kids they can be, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. And these are, again, those things that parents keep deep down. They're suffering silently because they're not allowed to admit those things, or they don't know who to admit those things to or what to even do with that. And so they stay relatively miserable thinking like this is the best it's going to get, or I've tried everything and, none of it has worked. So here I am. This is just the lot I have in life. And that is just not true. There are so many parents that not only are thinking the same things as you and feel the same way as you, but it is so important for you to find a person and people that get what you're going through as the parent of a strong-willed child, and to find a community of resources and a plan for you to make better days inevitable for your family. It's possible. You haven't tried everything if you haven't worked with me, and there's still so much possibility for the life that you thought you were going to have as a parent, being a possibility when you work on your composure, when you find new ways to communicate that are as intentional as a hostage negotiator. And that's the level you need with a parent with strong-willed kids. And then just being able to get them back to a higher level of baseline so that they're not so constantly irritable and, ready to set off at a moment's notice, by giving them more control, like we talked about, and more connection and attention. You're going to see a different kid. And I would love that for you if that's what you're feeling.
And I think what you've talked about today can apply to every single child, just if we think about changing our approach. I'm so thrilled that you have joined us today, Danielle. Do you have a few closing comments to take us out?
Yeah. Like I said, every time I'm given kind of a platform, I want to be able to say, hey, if you have learned all the things. If you have, a Rolodex of strategies that you've pulled from Instagram and you listen to all the parenting podcasts and you have all the books on your nightstand, you're not lacking information. We have the internet, right? You're not lacking information at this point. You are lacking individualized insight so that you can make sense of these bigger concepts. What does that actually mean for my kid at this age and this circumstance when I can't get them to get their car seat buckles on? Like, make it make sense. That's the level of insight you need to be able to troubleshoot and problem solve and tweak. And that's why you need, someone who really actually knows you and not just like a self-paced course that drops in your lap and figure it out, make it make sense yourself. And so if you don't have that level of support, that's the level of support you deserve as a parent that is, having a really hard time with a really challenging child. And so that's probably what's missing. So give yourself that benefit of the doubt. It's not you. You are not just a flawed parent that has a terrible child. That is not the reality. If you can look at it from a new angle, it's so much more hope-giving.
Thank you. Great closing words. It's important to hear perspectives from all corners of the world. If you have expertise, insights, or life experiences in the area of children's mental health from a proactive place and would like to be considered as a guest on Taking the Helm, email me at lynn@lynnmclaughlin.com. That's McLaughlin.com. And next week's guest is Amber Raymond. She's a practicing clinician in social work. She's also the founder of Mess Makers Incorporated. That's MESSS, 3 S's. She has a summer program that guides children to connect to themselves internally so they can better understand themselves and discover their truest potential. And if you're wondering why there's 3 S's, we're talking about motivation, empathy, self-regulation, self-awareness, and social skills with her company, Mess Makers. And in closing, let's look in the mirror, everyone, and learn what we need to and empower our children to face the ups and downs that life will surely bring. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Taking the Helm. We hope that Lynn and her guests have provided valuable insights on how to create a safe, emotional space for your children that empowers them to be their best selves. Until we talk again, have a wonderful week.